So hi everyone, bonjour tout le monde. Welcome to the first episode of The Politician and His or Her Idol. So first of all, happy Canada Day. It is a very memorable day for all of us Canadians, and it is a great honor for me to be airing this first episode on this important day. But before I introduce you to our guest today, I would just like to highlight the purpose of this talk show brought to you by BoXia and BIA Media. We want to bring Canadian politicians closer to the population, closer to you, allowing you to discover a hidden facet of them, a facet that is not accessible to us on a daily basis. So they're humans just like us. They definitely have an idol or a source of inspiration that influence who they have become today. So it can be a musician like Celine Dion, an economist, an activist, a poet, or many numerous other possibilities. So with great honor, we are welcoming our first guest, MPP Jessica Bell. Hi, Jessica.
Hey,
How are you doing today?
I'm really good. Thanks for having me on your show.
Well, thank you for taking the time out of your busy day to be here with us today. So I would like to quickly introduce you to our audience. As you can see, I'm actually sitting on my couch, so please feel free to make yourself comfortable as well. And so Jessica is an NDP member of the Provincial Parliament of Ontario. She represents the University Rosedale riding, and she has been elected to the 42nd Parliament since June 7, 2018. So is that accurate, Jessica? Is there something else I'm missing here?
That is right.
That's perfect. So without further ado, we're going to move on to our first question. And as I said, take the time to make yourself comfortable. And this is a very relaxed conversation. And is going to give us a chance to discover who your real idol is today. So before we do that, though, do you have any message for your constituents, perhaps family, friends, the audience watching us right now in Ontario, perhaps across Canada, even internationally?
The biggest issue we're facing in our riding right now is COVID-19 and how the pandemic is affecting people's lives and the economy. The key message I have to share is that we are going to get through this. Humanity got through the Spanish flu in 1918. We are going to get through 19. There will be a day when we look back at this time, remember it for being hard, and also acknowledge that it is over. It's also important to share that we are going to get through this together. We are going to help the people who are being hurt by COVID worst and first, and that includes migrant workers, seniors, people who are lower income, who are racialized. It's very important that we do everything we can to help the people who are being hit worst and first. That's how we're going to get through it.
That's amazing. Thank you so much, Jessica, for the encouraging words. Actually, just to get back quickly to the idea of this talk show, in fact, this was conceived throughout COVID-19. Because of this challenging time and confinement, we realized that it was very important to find creative ways or innovative ways to use our technology, right, to continue to entertain our audience and provide value. So this was essentially the purpose, and once again, to allow us to get to know you in a different way, perhaps that we cannot see you on a day-to-day basis. So this is the real time now to reveal our guest. So Jessica's idol or source of inspiration. So who could it be? Jessica, the floor is all yours. Could you please tell us who is your idol or source of inspiration? Someone who has impacted your life and contributed to who you have become today.
That's an excellent question. There are actually many people who I see as idols. I have chosen to identify idols that are lifelong activists because in my experience, being a lifelong activist, it's very difficult to maintain the momentum and continue to find hope. And it also, a lifelong activist can achieve so much in their lives And that's why I consider lifelong activists to be my idol. Before I became a politician, I was a community organizer for many years, nearly 20 years. And so who I became, what I prioritized, what I valued, that came from meeting organizers and activists and reading books about organizers and activists and seeing what they did, what their lives were. One person that has really inspired me is a lady called Judy De Silva. She is a mother of 5 children and a member of the Grassy Narrows First Nation in northwestern Ontario. I first met her when I was in my 20s, and I heard about the struggle in Grassy Narrows. It's a First Nations community that was severely impacted by a paper mill company dumping a huge amount of mercury, a poisonous toxin, into their waterways. And as a result of that, unemployment in their community went from near 0 to 90% because a lot of the people employed in Grassy Narrows were fishermen or involved in the fishing industry. No one's going to buy your fish if they know that it's poisonous or it's poisoned. And even 40 years later, that happened in the 60s, 40 years later, that community is still impacted by that mercury poisoning. Children born there today sicker than children that are born elsewhere in Canada. And Judy De Silva has lived in that community her whole life, and she has she's an inspiration because she just perseveres. She's done so much for this community. They've achieved so much. They've convinced the government to clean up the mercury in the river. They've increased the amount of funding that people who are impacted by mercury get so that they can continue to lead okay lives. And that persistence is really, I'd never really seen it before in someone. So that's one of the reasons why she's my idol.
Oh, that's really admirable. I mean, persistence and perseverance is definitely a very important quality for an activist, and actually, I would say for anybody in different professions.
I agree with you. Some of the most inspiring people are people that just stick with it and have a commitment to improve and grow from every challenge they face. And out of that, people can become very accomplished. And it's also, at least with Judy, now that I have children, I know how hard it is to have children and have a job at the same time. And Judy has 5 kids. I don't exactly know how she does it, but she does it. And that's inspirational too.
Right. Finding the work-life balance, right, on top of pursuing your interests and fighting for the community, the pursuit of justice, essentially.
Exactly. That's exactly right.
So you mentioned that you were able to meet Judy in your 20s. Were you ever able to visit the actual Grassy Narrows First Nation land?
Yes, I did. I've been up to Grassy Narrows a few times. Mm-hmm. And the reason why we went up is because there was a lot of logging that was happening on their territory by US multinational logging companies. And what is so disturbing about this is Grassy Narrows has a huge housing shortage. When I went door to door in the community, you'd open the door and you'd see a senior living in this home, and there'd be massive holes in the walls because nothing was being repaired. And that's terrible. That, this is a community where the temperature gets down to, -10, -20 degrees in the middle of winter. Seniors living in homes that where the cold air can just come in. And all this wood that was coming from Grassy Narrows territory was being sold to build homes in the United States for a premium. And Grassy Narrows never got to see any of that money, any of the benefits of having companies log on their land. So I went up there and I worked with the community, with many other people and many other organizations, to put a halt to that industrial logging, and to start working with the community to imagine a better economy and a better future. And that involves them having far greater control over their territory and what happens on it. That's how I met Judy. And I met her children as well. And when I first went up there, her children were so little, and now they're having kids of their own. So that's pretty inspiring as well.
Wow, that's amazing. So now her children are actually grown-up adults. Are they also activists? in the same cause, perhaps?
I think, anyone who, I can't imagine a child of Judy De Silva's not being politically engaged in some way. They're all on their, life path, and they all have different causes. I know two of her daughters regularly come to events that are held in Toronto to organize and fight for justice for Grassy Narrows. And they've, they speak, they get engaged in that way.
That's amazing. So since Judy, she had her community's cause at heart, was there a specific slogan, citation, or perhaps a quote that she went by in the past, or she said in the past, something that she's known for and you would like to share with our audience?
That's an excellent question. I don't know the answer to that. I am happy to share with you afterwards some of her very inspiring speeches. What I find most wonderful about how Judy speaks is that she always speaks from the heart. She doesn't write notes in advance like I would typically do, but what she says is mesmerizing because she talks about her land and the connection to the land and the connection that the Grassy Narrows people have to the land. And it's very moving, but I don't think there's like one quote or slogan that she has to, convey her ideas.
No problem. Yeah, I will definitely be glad to receive that in the future, perhaps if you are able to find any of the quotes. So now moving on, Jessica, you will need to put on your MPP hat for this next question, but don't worry, it is only going to be a few minutes. It will definitely not be a debate, I promise. It's guaranteed that it's not going to be like in Queen's Park.
Okay.
So Judy De Silva from the Grassy Narrows First Nation, located in northwestern Ontario, is a very well-known activist, like you mentioned, and she has an interest of fighting for her community's recognition and rights. And the pursuit of justice for this community continues until this day. So in your role as an MPP, are you aware of any legislation or measures being taken to improve the livelihoods of this community, or perhaps other communities like the Black or visible minority as well?
Yes, I do. There's a few examples that I'd like to give. Number one, the Ontario government agreed after years and years of pressure to allocate $5 million to a trust to clean up the rivers that Grassy Narrows uses. It's very important that the Ontario government continues its commitment to hire community members, engineers, designers, planners to get that river cleaned up. The science shows that it is possible to clean up that river. It just requires the political will. So that's one thing that we're pushing for. The second thing that is important for people to know about is that the Ontario government a year ago agreed to respect the UN Declaration of Rights for Indigenous People. And that includes the right for Indigenous people to have a say and control over their traditional territories. And that includes the right to what's called free, prior, and informed consent. What that means is that a large multinational company cannot go onto some traditional territory and start logging or mining and taking the resources and the profit without the community's consent. Unfortunately, in Canada, that's happening all across the country from coast to coast to coast. And it's an atrocity, and it's a stain on Canada's reputation that continues to happen. Even though the Ontario government supported our motion to respect the UN declaration, the government has to enforce that legislation. If there are people who are very concerned about the issue of Indigenous rights, I encourage them to contact their local MPP, uphold their commitment, uphold their vote. It's very easy to vote, but the rubber hits the road when it comes to what you're actually going to do. They're two examples.
Sorry, I actually just had a technical issue, I believe, with my earphones. I could not hear you for the last few seconds, but I was able to fix it.
Oh, good. I don't think a Zoom call or a call where there hasn't been some kind of issue in some way.
Right. So what type of new measures do you think we can come up with to respect their basic rights and to help communities like the First Nations thrive long term? Can you think of something, for example, that doesn't currently exist? Because a lot of the measures you mentioned have been put in place recently as well. But is there anything else that you could advocate for, perhaps?
Mm-hmm. Well, I would say that, these measures in theory have been passed at Queen's Park, but that's very different than what's happening on the ground. So if we could get the Ontario government to respect Indigenous rights and allow First Nations to have control over their territories and to treat them like true nations, which is what they are, and engage in nation-to-nation conversations, not we're just going to do whatever we want to your land, then it would be a significant step forward. This has been a fight that has been continuing for hundreds of years, and it needs to continue. And people like us, people who are not Indigenous, we need to show our support for this cause by, writing letters, giving donations to Indigenous advocacy groups, attending protests, showing your support online, and also contacting our local elected officials and telling them this is something that's important to us. There are just, my experience as a politician is that, words are easy, but it's the action that really matters. And this government has not demonstrated that it is willing to take real action yet.
Mm-hmm. I completely agree. I think having allies in any community, whether it's First Nations, Black community, or any community, being able to create awareness or raise awareness about the issues going in, their day-to-day lives, perhaps because we cannot fully relate to it or see it,
Right.
doesn't necessarily mean that it's not important, or that, as you mentioned, are causes that are worth fighting for, and continue to advocate and continue to help and raise that visibility.
They're excellent points that you're making. I agree.
So time flies, Jessica. I mean, we're almost nearing the end of this talk show. Just wondering if there was any last words that you would like to share with our audience, Canadians, in Ontario and across Canada watching us right now.
I want to thank you for hosting this show. I really appreciated you asking me who my idols were, because it allowed me to really, give that matter a good think. For those who, and also just to recognize people who don't get the kind of recognition that they deserve. Judy De Silva is not one that is in the news every day, but she does work that impacts her community for the better for now and in the future. So it's nice to be able to share her work. For those of you that are listening, I guess my message is similar to what I said in the beginning. COVID-19, I know this period of our lives, it's very difficult, but it's going to end, and we are going to look back at time, and we're going to be better people for it. My hope is that we use this crisis as a time to work together to advocate for a better new normal. For me, a better new normal means making cities more affordable, making more affordable, addressing some of the huge inequalities we have between poor people, people of color, Black people and white people, and also doing everything we can to bring about real environmental change. If we can respond so quickly to COVID-19, we should be able to respond in a meaningful and significant way to the far greater catastrophe that is looming in front of us, and that is climate change. I know we can do it, and as an elected official and an MPP, I look forward to working with any of you that are interested in working with me to achieve these goals. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Jessica. I believe that's completely true. Unity is very important to be able to achieve issues or accomplish interests of common interests for all of us. So thank you so much for your time today. It was really a pleasure having you in this first episode and discovering Judy Da Silva. As you mentioned, not all of us perhaps knew who she was, even though she did great work, and perhaps she didn't have that visibility like a normal or a regular, musician or someone else would have had, right? But it's very important to highlight the accomplishments and the perseverance that she demonstrated over the course of the years to really pursue and continue the fight for the rights for her community and improve the well-being of the members of her community.
Thanks for your time. Thanks for the show.
Happy Canada Day. Enjoy the rest of your day. We'll see you on Saturday, July 11th at 11 a.m. So same time, same channel. Bonne fête du Canada. Hasta pronto. 再见.